history at the University of Iowa. And actually been trying to figure out a good way to start this, since I'm not going to be able to read the entirety of the paper. Actually, I got some inspiration during the panel this morning on which Alice Drager presented, although it doesn't have to do with actually her presentation. It has to do with kind of a side discussion near the end of the panel, namely bad music. And that kind of sent something off in my head. And anybody remember a really bad group from the 1980s called the Mentors? You're lucky. Their music was center stage at the congressional obscenity hearings in the mid-1980s, where most of us first got to know Tipper Gore. And the album that got them there was called You Axed For It. If you've never seen it, you probably remember it. Has the members of the group, three quasi-overweight, sweaty males wearing executioner's hoods, and with three very scantily clad women knelt down, preparing to do whatever. You can make judgments about that cover, and they'd probably be pretty accurate even if you never actually heard any of the music. Now, theoretically, you could make a judgment based on that cover, and it could have ended up being good music. Trust me, it wasn't. In fact, the music was probably even worse than that cover. Again, I suggest staying away from it if you ever happen to run across it, a copy of it in a used record store. But that leads me into what I talk about a lot in my paper. And I don't have copies of it. I'm going to post a link to a PDF of it on the internet. I'll stick it on my blog later this evening. My blog is indablog@wordpress.com. And I talk about a lot of judgments that were made about the man who would be queen, based in large part on the cover. And in the paper that Drager put out last year, she said, in researching the history of the controversy, in researching this history, I was dismayed to discover how many people, including professional scholars, were ready to give me detailed opinions about the book while admitting that they hadn't bothered to read it. I don't doubt that a bit. In fact, that's always kind of been my suspicion as to how The Man Who Would Be Queen ended up with its random literary award nomination. I've never really seen any indication that anybody who was responsible for nominating that book actually read it. I don't know. There may have been some evidence come out later, long after the fact that actually did happen, but I never heard anything indicating that anybody involved with that actually read. And Drager criticizes that sort of thing, judging the book by its cover, or at least judging the book without having read it. Specifically, she talks about Joan Roughgarden. A conversation that Drager had with Paul Basie. Roughgarden immediately denounced the book and declared it a threat to the LGBT community. Roughgarden could not have actually known what the book said because it wasn't yet published. Though in, I believe, a response in the Archives of Sexual Behavior says that there was a way she could have actually known it because it was online already. Fine. But I have a deeper concern about the concern over the reactions by Roughgarden and others to the cover. Okay, why is knowing the contents of the interior of the book always a prerequisite to expressing very valid concerns about a disgusting illustration, one clearly designed to play to the worst anti-transsexual and anti-gay male prejudices, and by extension, the book that's designed to sell. Again, by valid extension, the potential for the book to be a threat to the LGBT community. Again, primarily, or even solely because of the cover. The dubiously manufactured lack of consensus over transsexual-related healthcare that became the scientific status quo post-Meyer-Rader back in 1979, that ultimately led to the total legitimacy inversion for transition-related healthcare for transsexual Medicaid patients in Iowa. Anybody who's familiar with legal stuff, get out on Lexis, take a look at the difference in the 8th Circuit Court opinions in cases of Pinicky versus Pricer, which was from 1980, and Smith versus Rasmussen, 2001. The only real difference is one was backed up by a lack of, quote-unquote, lack of consensus in scholarship. I mean, must all of us here wait until Amanda Would Be Queen or something like Blanchard wrote, get cited right alongside Paul McHugh's stuff, in a court opinion that obliterates existing pro-transsexual law and, for all practical purposes, retransitions us, I don't think we should have to. Sure, it's best to have read all of what one is criticizing, but some nuggets are sufficient for people with reasonable intelligence and relevant experience to, for lack of a better phrase, judge a book by its cover. Granted, that would seem to be the antithesis of academic discourse, but how inappropriate is it really, in light of Bailey apparently wanting people to judge the cover of The Man Who Wouldn't Be Queen? In 2003, he indicated that despite using the word transsexualism on the cover, he wanted people to get the impression that the book was about something else. This is a quote from his website. Even transsexual women who support my arguments in some cases regretted the choice of the title and the book cover art. I do not regret either. Only 1/3 of the book is about transsexualism per se, and only one chapter out of 11 is about non-homosexual transsexuals who were the most aggrieved. Both the title and the cover art refer to male femininity in a humorous fashion. Male femininity is what the book is about. So yeah, I judge the book by its cover. Sue me. But I judged it on its own merits. And I was not in 2008, and still not, willing to accept the deceptive messages that Bailey claims he was attempting to convey with it. Namely that it was science, or that it was about people who are actually transsexual. Why couldn't he have just titled the book, The Man Who Would Be Queen, Anecdotes on Male Femininity Gleaned from Recent Visits to Chicago Area Bars? I can't take full credit for that. I've heard other people come up with similar retorts to the title of that book. I think Mary Kiesling came up with something similar. I think it's fairly easy, should be fairly easy, to say, okay, if it wasn't about transsexuals, why the hell did you title it that? That's just what I came up with. The answer to that question is it because even he didn't really believe what he wrote a couple of paragraphs later than the paragraph I just quoted? Quote, not only do I believe that there is nothing inherently harmful in the ideas I have discussed, I actually believe that the airing of these ideas will help transsexuals. You must be familiar with the definition of the word help that has completely escaped me. The first I ever heard of the book was actually its glowing review in the National Review. Hopefully everybody knows what that publication is. Nothing about us that gets reviewed favorably in that book has any potential to help us. Now,